The school bus exploded into flames just as Garrett Calloway's hammer struck the final nail of the day. Through the inferno, he could hear children screaming. 22 voices crying out for help, their terror cutting through the September afternoon like shattered glass through skin. Garrett didn't think. He simply ran. Behind him, Rodriguez was shouting something about waiting for the fire department, about being crazy, about staying back. But those words dissolved into nothing as Garrett's work boots pounded against the hot asphalt of Highway 34, somewhere in the heart of California, where the sun beat down mercilessly even in autumn. At 42 years old, Garrett had learned to find peace in the monotony of hard labor. It paid the bills, kept food on the table for his daughter Wren, and demanded nothing more than an honest day's work. But right now, peace was the furthest thing from his mind. The bus had rolled twice, maybe 3 times before coming to rest on its side in the ravine. Black smoke poured from the engine compartment, thick and angry, reaching toward the sky like the fingers of death itself. And through the shattered windows, Garrett could see them. Small faces pressed against glass, small hands pounding, pounding, pounding. He thought of Wren, his 12-year-old daughter, probably sitting in her classroom right now, learning about photosynthesis or the Revolutionary War. Safe, alive, breathing. These children deserved the same chance. The emergency door at the back of the bus was jammed. The impact had warped the frame, sealing it shut like a tomb. Garrett grabbed the largest rock he could find, his calloused hands wrapping around it with the same grip that had swung hammers and carried lumber for 2 decades. He brought the rock down on the emergency window. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th strike, the safety glass finally surrendered, pellets raining down like hail. "One at a time," Garrett commanded, reaching through the opening. "Oldest kids first. Help the younger ones." A boy, maybe 12, scrambled toward him. Garrett pulled him through, practically throwing him toward safety. More children came, a blur of backpacks and tear-streaked faces. His arms burned from the cuts the broken glass left behind, ribbons of red appearing across his forearms. But he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. "How many more?" he asked a girl as he pulled her through. "Maybe 5. The twins are stuck. Their seatbelt won't—" Garrett didn't wait for her to finish. He boosted himself through the window, ignoring how the remaining glass tore at his shirt and skin. Inside, the bus was a nightmare of smoke and chaos, backpacks and lunchboxes scattered everywhere. The driver slumped over the wheel, unconscious but breathing. Then he heard them. 2 small voices, identical in their terror, calling out from somewhere in the middle of the burning bus. The twins. Garrett crawled over overturned seats, the metal floor burning his palms through his work gloves. The smoke was so thick he could barely see, but he followed those voices like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. He found them in the 7th row, 2 identical girls, maybe 7 years old, their seatbelts jammed in the crash. They were holding hands even now, even as flames crept closer, even as the world burned around them. "It's okay," Garrett said, forcing his voice to stay calm despite the fire he could see spreading along the front of the bus. "I'm going to get you out." "I want Mommy," one of the girls sobbed. "We're scared," the other added. "I know, sweethearts, I know. What are your names?" "I'm Clover," the first one said through her tears. "And I'm Briar," the other whispered. "Okay, Clover and Briar, I need you to be brave for just 1 more minute. Can you do that for me?" Both girls nodded, their green eyes wide with terror, but trusting him completely. Garrett pulled out his pocket knife, the one Wren had given him for Father's Day 3 years ago, the blade still sharp, the handle engraved with crooked letters that spelled out, "World's Best Dad." He never imagined he would use it for something like this. The first seatbelt gave way, then the second. Garrett grabbed both girls, one under each arm, and started back toward the exit. The heat was overwhelming now. His exposed skin felt like it was being pressed against a stove. His work shirt was actually smoking. Close your eyes and hold your breath, he instructed. Then through the chaos, he saw it, a rectangle of light, the emergency exit. He practically threw the girls through the opening into the waiting arms of his co-workers. Rodriguez caught Clover while another worker grabbed Breyer. Get them up the hill, now! Miller, no! The whole thing's about to go! But Garrett was already climbing back into hell. The driver was still in there. He found the man slumped over the wheel, unconscious, maybe 200 pounds of dead weight. Garrett grabbed him under the arms and pulled. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest. His lungs begged for clean air. The metal floor was now hot enough to burn through his jeans. But he pulled, inch by torturous inch, back toward the exit. The windows on the left side started exploding from the heat, showering him with more glass. Finally, miraculously, he reached the emergency exit. Other hands reached in, firefighters in full gear, taking the driver from him. Garrett collapsed, half in, half out of the bus. Strong hands pulled him clear just as the fuel tank exploded. The blast threw everyone to the ground. A wave of heat and pressure that Garrett felt even through his closed eyelids. When he opened them again, the bus was completely engulfed, a pillar of black smoke rising into the California sky. Jesus Christ, Rodriguez whispered from beside him. Calloway, you crazy son of a... You saved them all. 22 children, one driver, all alive. Because one man decided that other people's children mattered as much as his own. At Riverside General Hospital, the emergency room was controlled chaos. Garrett sat on a gurney while a young doctor wrapped his arms in gauze, treating the dozens of cuts from the broken glass. Second-degree burns on his palms and forearms. Smoke inhalation that made every breath feel like swallowing sandpaper. But he was alive, and so were those children. The doctor was explaining something about keeping him overnight for observation when the door opened. Garrett looked up, expecting Rodriguez or maybe one of the other crew members. Instead, a woman walked in who looked like she had stepped out of a different world entirely. She wore a charcoal business suit that probably cost more than Garrett made in a month. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon, not a strand out of place. But it was her eyes that caught him, green like sea glass, the same green as those twin girls he had carried through the flames. Right now, those eyes were filled with tears. Mr. Calloway, her voice cracked on his name. I'm Dr. Serafina Ashford. Clover and Breyer are my daughters. Garrett tried to sit up straighter, suddenly acutely aware of his soot-stained face, his bandaged hands, his torn work clothes, the construction dirt still visible under his fingernails. Are they okay? The girls. And the driver, is he... Serafina stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. They're perfect. Because of you, they're perfect. She took a step closer, tears flowing freely down her face now. The doctors checked them for smoke inhalation, but they're going to be fine. You saved their lives. You saved all those children. And you're asking about the driver? 22 kids, ma'am, plus one driver. That's 23 families who needed everyone to come home today. Serafina was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone. I'm calling my assistant. We're transferring you to St. Mary's immediately. Best burn unit in the state. Private room, specialist care, everything you need. I'm fine here, Garrett said. Serafina's phone hung in midair. Mr. Calloway, I don't think you understand. I own St. Mary's. I own this hospital. I own every major medical facility from the East Coast to the West Coast. Whatever you need, it's yours. The words should have impressed him. Instead, Garrett just shook his head. I appreciate that, Dr. Ashford, but I've got decent insurance through the construction union. Covers what I need. These doctors are doing just fine. You're declining better medical care. I'm declining unnecessary medical care. Save the fancy room for someone who really needs it. For the first time since she walked in, something other than gratitude flickered across Serafina's face. Confusion. Maybe even fascination. Mr. Calloway, I could buy this entire city block if I wanted to. I could write you a check right now for more money than you'll make in the next 10 years. And you're telling me you want to stay in a shared room with union insurance? Garrett met her eyes directly. Ma'am, I didn't run into that bus because I wanted something. I ran in because those kids needed help. That's it. That's all. The room was silent except for the beeping of monitors. You're the strangest man I've ever met, Serafina finally said. You ever drop a sledgehammer on your foot from scaffolding 2 stories up? A ghost of a smile crossed Garrett's face. That's strange. This is just Tuesday. Later that evening, Garrett stood in the doorway of his apartment at Garden View Apartments, watching his daughter's face as she processed everything that had happened. Wren was 12 years old with her father's dark hair and her mother's stubborn chin. She had been pacing by the door for hours, her phone clutched in her hand, the news footage playing on repeat. Construction worker hero saves 22 children from burning bus. Now she stood in front of him, staring at his bandaged arms, his exhausted face, the hospital bracelet still on his wrist. Dad, her voice broke. You could have died. But I didn't, baby girl. Wren threw herself at him, careful of his injuries but desperate to hold on. The neighbor told me. She saw it on TV. She said you went back in 3 times. 3 times, Dad. There were people who needed help. Wren pulled back, and Garrett saw something shift in her expression. Something older than 12 years. Mom always said you were nobody special, she said quietly. Just another construction worker going nowhere. That's what she told me when she left, that you'd never amount to anything. Garrett's chest tightened. Even now, 3 years after Delilah had packed her bags and walked out, her words could still cut. She was wrong. Wren's voice was fierce now. You're the most special person in the world, Dad. When everyone else froze, you moved. When everyone else waited, you acted. That's what makes you different. She hugged him again, and this time she didn't try to hide her tears. You know what makes me special, Wren? Garrett said softly, his bandaged hand gentle on her hair. Being your dad. That's the only hero I need to be. That night after Wren had finally fallen asleep, Garrett sat at the kitchen table staring at the bills spread before him. Rent was due next week. Wren's school shoes were getting too small. Her science fair project needed supplies they couldn't afford. And today Rodriguez had pulled him aside with news that made everything worse. Layoffs were coming. 20% of the crew, gone by Christmas. Garrett's name was on the list. He thought about Serafina Ashford and her offers of help, about the world she lived in, where problems could be solved with phone calls and checkbooks, about the gulf between that world and his cramped apartment with its water-stained ceiling and second-hand furniture. Then he looked at Wren's honor roll certificates on the wall, her science fair ribbons, the photo of her at 7 years old, the day Delilah left, standing in this same doorway with tears streaming down her face. He had kept them both alive this long on nothing but hard work and stubborn hope. He would figure this out too. He always did. 2 weeks later, everything changed. The layoff notice came on a Monday. By Wednesday, Garrett was cleaning out his locker at the construction site, trying not to think about how he would make rent, pay for groceries, keep the lights on. His phone rang Thursday morning, a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Calloway, this is Serafina Ashford. I was hoping you might have time to meet with me today. I have a proposition. The Ashford Children's Medical Center was still under construction, but even half finished, it took Garrett's breath away. 15 stories of glass and steel, designed specifically for pediatric emergency care. State-of-the-art everything. Serafina walked him through the halls, her heels clicking against concrete floors that would soon be covered in pristine tile. She explained the building systems, HVS that could isolate entire wings, backup generators that could run for a week. Security protocols more complex than anything Garrett had ever seen. Then she stopped in what would become the main lobby and turned to face him. I want you to be our head of facilities and safety, she said. Starting salary of $90,000 a year, full benefits, flexible hours so you can be there for Ren. Garrett stared at her. I'm a construction worker. I barely know how to send an email. I've had 3 different directors in 5 years. All of them had degrees from impressive universities and absolutely no practical instincts. Serafina's green eyes were intense. You diagnosed a warped door frame and jammed seatbelts in a burning bus while everyone else stood frozen. You made split-second decisions that saved 23 lives. That's not something you learn in business school. Dr. Ashford, I've watched qualified people fail, Mr. Calloway. They see problems on spreadsheets. You see them in walls and wiring, in the way a building breathes. She paused. And my daughters haven't stopped talking about you since the accident. They call you their superhero. I'd like them to see that heroes don't disappear when the cameras turn off. Garrett was quiet for a long moment. $90,000. More than double what he'd made breaking his back on construction sites. Enough to give Ren everything she deserved. Why me? He finally asked. Really? Serafina's expression softened. Because you ran into a fire when everyone else ran away. Because you asked about the bus driver before you asked about yourself. Because when I offered you the best medical care money could buy, you told me to save it for someone who needed it more. She stepped closer. I've spent my entire career surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, connections, power. You're the first person in years who wanted nothing except to know if the people you saved were okay. Her voice dropped. That's rare, Mr. Calloway. That's worth more than any degree. That evening, Garrett told Ren about the offer. She listened with widening eyes, then launched herself at him for the second time in 2 weeks. Dad, you have to take it. It's not that simple, Ren. I don't know anything about running hospital facilities. I don't know how to manage budgets or... Dad. She pulled back and looked at him with that too old expression. You didn't know how to rescue kids from a burning bus either, but you figured it out. She grabbed his bandaged hands gently. This is our chance to actually live instead of just survive. Please. He took the job. The first weeks were a blur of learning curves and late nights. Dorothy Chen, the outgoing facilities manager, was patient with his technological struggles and generous with her decades of experience. Don't let the people with fancy titles intimidate you, she told him. They know theory. You know reality. Garrett proved her right within the first week. A door sensor in the pediatric ICU malfunctioned, sending the entire wing into lockdown with critical patients who needed immediate access. While maintenance called the security company and requested a technician who wouldn't arrive for 3 hours, Garrett grabbed a screwdriver, popped open the panel, and found the problem in 30 seconds. Misaligned magnetic sensor, probably bumped during cleaning. He had the doors working in under 5 minutes. Word spread through the hospital like wildfire. The construction worker who saved the bus children could fix anything. But the professional victories weren't what transformed Garrett's life. It was Wednesday afternoons. Every week, Ren came to Serafina's house after school to work on projects with the twins. The first time she walked through the door of that sprawling estate, her mouth literally fell open. Dad, she whispered, it's like something from a movie. The house was stunning, all glass and stone and architectural angles that somehow looked both modern and timeless. But what made it feel like a home were the children's drawings taped to the refrigerator, the shoes scattered by the door, the half-built Lego castle on the coffee table, the telescope in the corner pointed at the night sky. Clover and Briar adopted Ren immediately and completely. Sister Ren, will you teach us how to make a volcano? Sister Ren, come see our robot. It can solve a Rubik's Cube. Sister Ren, you're the smartest person we know except for Mommy. Garrett watched his daughter bloom under their attention. At school, kids thought she was strange for caring so much about science. Here she was celebrated. Here she was exactly who she was supposed to be. One evening, while the girls conducted experiments with crystal-growing kits in the home laboratory, Garrett found himself in the kitchen with Serafina, preparing dinner together. It felt strangely natural, like they had done this 100 times before. "Can I ask you something?" Serafina said, stirring a pot of marinara sauce. Her grandmother's recipe, she told him. "Why construction? You're clearly intelligent. You could have done anything." Garrett considered his answer. "My father drank himself to death in a trailer park. My mother cleaned houses to keep us fed. College wasn't an option, but I was good with my hands, and construction paid enough to support Ren." "And her mother?" The question hung in the air. Garrett had avoided this topic for weeks, but something about Serafina's quiet attention made him want to answer. "Delilah left when Ren was 9. Said I was going nowhere, that she deserved better, that staying with me was killing her dreams." He paused. "She remarried 8 months later. Thaddeus Mercer, real estate developer in California. Nice house, nice cars, nice life. Does she see Ren? 4 times in 3 years. Missed her birthday every year. Missed her appendectomy last spring. I called her 12 times during the surgery, and she never picked up." Garrett's voice was flat, controlled. "She sends expensive gifts sometimes. I think it helps her feel like a mother without actually having to be one." Serafina set down her spoon. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Ren deserves better than someone who sees her as an inconvenience. We both do." "Yes." Serafina's voice was soft. "You do." She told him about her own divorce then, about Richard, her ex-husband, who had seen her career as a hobby and her ambitions as embarrassments, about the night she'd missed his company gala to perform emergency surgery on a 3-year-old with a collapsed lung, and how he'd filed for divorce the next morning, about how he visited the twins twice a year and sent expensive presents to compensate for his absence. "He didn't even fight for custody," she said. "Told the lawyers the girls were better off with someone who had time for such things." "His loss," Garrett said simply. Serafina looked at him for a long moment, something shifting behind her green eyes. "Yes," she said quietly. "It was." The trouble started on a Tuesday afternoon. Kendall Harrington was the daughter of a prominent local businessman, the kind of girl who had been told her whole life that her family's money made her better than everyone else. She had taken an immediate dislike to Ren, whose father had become a local celebrity and whose new friends lived in the biggest house in the county. "Your dad's just a construction worker who got lucky," Kendall hissed during lunch. "He only saved those kids because he thought he'd get something out of it." Ren ignored her. For a week, she ignored her. But Kendall kept pushing. "I heard your dad is dating Dr. Ashford now. Makes sense. Poor people always find ways to climb up, don't they?" "Shut up, Kendall." "Or what? You'll cry to your rich fake mommy?" I said, "Shut up. Your dad's pathetic. A charity case pretending to be a hero. Everyone knows." Ren's fist connected with Kendall's nose before anyone could finish gasping. The principal called Garrett immediately. Serafina drove him to the school, her knuckles white on the steering wheel of her car. In the principal's office, Ren sat with a black eye swelling shut, tears streaming down her face, but her chin raised in defiance. "She said you only saved those kids for money," Ren whispered when her father knelt beside her. "She's been saying it all week, that you're a fake, that you're using Dr. Ashford, that we're trash pretending to be something we're not. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it would hurt you, and you've already been hurt enough, Dad. Mom hurt you. The layoffs hurt you. I didn't want to add to it." Garrett's heart cracked clean in half. Before he could respond, Serafina stepped forward. Her voice, when she spoke to the principal, could have frozen water. "Mr. Davidson, I understand your school has a zero-tolerance policy on fighting. I assume you also have a zero-tolerance policy on bullying?" The principal shifted uncomfortably. "Dr. Ashford," because that black eye didn't appear from nowhere. And I have it on good authority that Miss Harrington has been harassing Wren Calloway for over a week with no intervention from your staff. These are complicated situations. These are simple situations that your administration has chosen to ignore. Serafina's eyes were ice. My legal team would be very interested in reviewing your school's compliance with state anti-bullying statutes. Unless, of course, appropriate action is taken today. The principal went pale. In the end, Kendall was suspended for bullying. Wren received a warning, her record unmarked. As they walked out of the building, Wren was quiet. Then in the car, she spoke. Dad, can I tell you something? Always, baby girl. When Kendall was saying those things, I kept thinking about what you taught me, about how being brave means doing the right thing, even when you're scared. She looked down at her bruised knuckles. But I also realized something. You never fight back when people say mean things about you. You just take it, like you believe them. Garrett's throat tightened. Maybe I'm not supposed to hit people, Wren continued, but maybe you're not supposed to let people make you feel small either. She met his eyes in the mirror. Dad, you're worth standing up for too. I wish you could see yourself the way I see you. Garrett couldn't speak. His 12-year-old daughter had just handed him a truth he'd spent his whole life avoiding. He was worth fighting for. That night, an email arrived from an address Garrett recognized instantly. His stomach turned to ice. Saw you on the news. Heard you're doing well now. I think it's time we talked about Wren's future. I'll be in touch. Delilah was coming back. She arrived on a Tuesday morning, sweeping into the hospital lobby like a hurricane in designer heels. Delilah Mercer, formerly Calloway, looked exactly as she had 3 years ago. Perfect makeup, perfect hair, a handbag that cost more than Garrett's old monthly salary. And beside her, Thaddeus Mercer, her new husband, radiating the particular arrogance of men who had never been told no. There you are, Delilah's voice carried across the lobby, ensuring every person present could hear. The big hero himself, too important to return your ex-wife's calls? Garrett felt every eye in the building turn toward them. Delilah, this isn't the place. Oh, I think it's exactly the place. She looked around with theatrical disdain. This fancy hospital where you somehow convince them to give you a job you're completely unqualified for. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Dorothy Chen stepped forward, her voice firm despite her small stature. Delilah ignored her. I'm Wren's mother. I have every right to discuss my daughter's welfare, especially now that her father is playing house with some rich divorcee. The word cut through the lobby like a knife. You haven't seen Wren in 6 months. Garrett's voice was quiet but steady. You missed her birthday, her science fair. She won first place, her honor roll ceremony. Because I was building a stable life for her in California. You were building a life for yourself. Wren was never part of that equation. Delilah's composure cracked, just for a moment. Then her expression hardened into something ugly. I'm filing for custody modification. You've been letting our daughter get into fights, exposing her to inappropriate influences, and clearly you can't provide the stability she needs. The stability she needs? Garrett stared at her. You walked out when she was 9 years old. You chose Thaddeus in California and your new life over your own daughter. You don't get to come back now just because you've decided I'm worth something. You made me look like a bad mother. I didn't have to make you look like anything, Delilah. You did that yourself. That's enough. Serafina's voice cut through the confrontation like a surgeon's blade. She stood at the entrance, still in her white coat, radiating authority that made everyone in the lobby stand straighter. I'm Dr. Serafina Ashford. This is my hospital, and you're creating a disturbance that's affecting patients and staff. Delilah's eyes narrowed. Ah, the rich widow. Divorcee, Serafina corrected coolly. And what I am is irrelevant. What's relevant is that you're harassing an employee in his workplace. If you have legal matters to discuss, I suggest you contact Mr. Calloway's lawyer. You can't. I can. And I will. Serafina's voice dropped to ice. The Ashford Foundation has an excellent legal department. They've already begun compiling documentation of your 3-year absence from your daughter's life. Every missed birthday, every ignored phone call, every promise broken. If you want to challenge Garrett's custody, you will lose, spectacularly and publicly. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Thaddeus tugged at Delilah's arm, his expression making clear he wanted no part of this fight. This isn't over, Delilah said. No, Serafina agreed. It isn't. But when it is, Mr. Calloway and his daughter will still be standing. I'll make sure of it. The custody papers arrived a week later. Garrett read them in his kitchen, his coffee going cold as the allegations piled up. Unfit parent, reckless behavior, violent influences, inappropriate relationships, a demand for primary custody and relocation to California. Wren found him there, still staring at the documents with hollow eyes. She can't do this. Wren's voice shook. She can't just come back after 3 years and take me away from you? No, baby girl. Garrett pulled her close. She can't. We're going to fight this. The preparation took 3 weeks. Edmund Crawford, Serafina's personal attorney, took the case without charging a cent. Garrett handed over everything he had. 3 years of documentation, every missed visit, every broken promise, every voicemail Delilah had ignored. I kept it all, he admitted quietly. I thought maybe someday she'd come back and want to be a mother. I wanted to show her what she'd missed, help her reconnect with Wren. Crawford's expression was unreadable. It's going to help you keep your daughter, Mr. Calloway. That's what matters now. The night before the hearing, Garrett stood on his apartment balcony, staring at the city lights. His phone buzzed. Serafina. How are you holding up? Terrified, he admitted. Good. Terror means you understand what's at stake. A pause. Garrett, I need to tell you something. Before tomorrow. Before all of this. What is it? I love you. Her voice was soft but certain. I love Wren. Whatever happens in that courtroom, you need to know that you're not alone anymore. We're family. All of us. And families face things together. Garrett closed his eyes. 3 years of struggle, of barely surviving, of wondering if he was enough. I love you too, he said. I think I have since that first day in the hospital. Good. He could hear her smile. Then let's go win tomorrow. The courtroom was old and imposing, all marble and echoes. Judge Martha Coleman presided. Silver hair, wire-rimmed glasses, eyes that missed nothing. She reviewed the files in silence while Garrett sat at the plaintiff's table, trying not to fidget. Across the aisle, Delilah looked every inch the concerned mother. Conservative suit, minimal makeup, tissue clutched in her manicured hands. The arguments were brutal. Delilah's lawyer painted Garrett as reckless, a man who charged into burning vehicles instead of waiting for professionals, who allowed his daughter to assault classmates, who pursued financially advantageous relationships with wealthy women. Then Crawford stood. Your Honor, I'd like to present documentation of Mrs. Mercer's involvement in Wren's life over the past 3 years. He submitted a thick binder. 3 years of absence cataloged in painful detail. 37 school events missed, 12 birthdays and holidays without contact, 1 emergency appendectomy that Mrs. Mercer failed to attend or even acknowledge, despite 12 phone calls from Mr. Calloway during the procedure. Judge Coleman's expression grew stonier with each item. Mrs. Mercer took 6 international vacations in the past year, Hawaii, Paris, the Caribbean. But she couldn't manage a 2-hour flight to see her daughter. I was establishing stability, Delilah began. A 2-hour flight, Judge Coleman interrupted. Once, in 3 years. That was too much? Delilah had no answer. Then the judge turned to Wren. Young lady, I understand you'd like to make a statement. Wren stood. She was shaking, but her voice grew stronger with every word. I want to stay with my dad. He's the only one who's always been there for me. She took a breath. When I was sick, Dad sat by my bed all night. When I didn't understand my homework, he taught himself new math just so he could help me. When Mom left, he never said a single bad word about her, even though I heard him crying in the kitchen when he thought I was asleep. Delilah's face crumpled, but Wren wasn't finished. Mom says Dad is a bad influence, but Dad taught me that being brave means doing the right thing even when you're terrified. Yes, I hit Kendall Harrington. I'm not proud of that, but she spent a week calling my father worthless, saying he only saved those kids for money, saying we were trash pretending to be something we're not. Her voice cracked, but held. My dad saves people he doesn't even know. He works until he can barely stand to give me opportunities he never had. He taught me that character matters more than money. She looked directly at her mother. Mom, you chose California. You chose Thaddeus. You chose new clothes and fancy vacations and a life without me in it. You made your choices. I've had to live with them for 3 years. Her final words were barely a whisper. Family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people who stay when things get hard. The people who choose you every single day. She turned back to the judge. My dad chooses me every day. That's why I want to stay with him. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Judge Coleman removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Mrs. Mercer, your petition is denied. Custody remains with Mr. Calloway. You may petition for supervised visitation after demonstrating 6 months of consistent, documented involvement in your daughter's life. She looked directly at Delilah. Parenting isn't something you do when it's convenient, Mrs. Mercer. Your daughter deserved better than 3 years of broken promises. This court will not reward that neglect. As Delilah was led out by her husband, she paused at the door. Her eyes found Wren's one last time. I did love you, she said quietly. I just loved myself more. Then she was gone. Outside the courthouse, joy exploded. Clover and Briar had been waiting with a handmade banner. We are family. They crashed into Wren, all 3 girls crying and laughing and holding each other like they'd never let go. Serafina found Garrett standing apart, watching them with tears streaming down his face. So, she said softly, sliding her hand into his, are we official now? Garrett looked at her. This woman who had stood by him, fought for him, chosen his broken little family without hesitation. We've been official since that first day in the hospital, he said, when you looked at me like I was worth something. He kissed her then, their first real kiss, right there on the courthouse steps with 3 cheering girls as witnesses. 1 year later, a crowd gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony at the Ashford Calloway Family Center. 30 units of free housing for families with children in long-term hospital care. A place where parents wouldn't have to choose between being at their child's bedside and keeping a roof over their heads. Garrett stood at the podium, Serafina beside him, their 3 daughters in the front row. Wren at 13 now, Clover and Briar at 8, still holding hands the way they always had. A reporter called out, Mr. Calloway, from construction worker to hospital director to this, what's your advice? Garrett looked at his family, at Wren, with her science fair trophies and her fierce heart, at the twins, who had adopted them without question, at Serafina, who had seen something in him that he couldn't see in himself. Sometimes life puts you in front of a fire, he said. You can watch it burn. You can wait for someone else to handle it, or you can decide that what's on the other side matters enough to walk through the flames. He paused. I walked through, and on the other side, I found my family. That evening, the 5 of them walked through the halls of the new center. Garrett carried Briar on his shoulders. Serafina held Clover's hand. Wren walked between them, finally belonging in a way she had never belonged before. When they got home, Garrett found a letter in the mailbox. No return address. but he recognized the handwriting. Garrett, I've been seeing Wren every other weekend, like the court ordered. She's incredible. I don't know how you did it, raising her alone, keeping her so kind and strong when I gave you nothing but absence. She said something last week that I haven't been able to forget. She said, Mom, Dad never told me to hate you. He just showed me what love looks like. And now I know the difference. I'm trying to learn that difference too. It's the least I can do. Tell Serafina thank you for loving our daughter when I couldn't. Delilah Garrett read the letter twice. Then he folded it carefully and put it in the drawer where he kept Wren's report cards and the twins' drawings and the wedding invitation he and Serafina had been designing together. Not everything broken could be mended, but sometimes broken things could still find their way toward healing. He walked into the living room, where Serafina was helping Clover with homework, while Briar attempted to braid Wren's hair into something she called unicorn style. Laughter filled the air like music. Dad! Wren spotted him first. Save me! Briar's turning me into a magical creature. A beautiful magical creature, Briar protested. Garrett laughed and joined them, settling into the chaos like it was the only place he had ever belonged. Because it was. He thought about that September afternoon on Highway 34, about the flames, about the children screaming, about the moment he decided to run toward the fire instead of away from it. He hadn't known then what waited on the other side. Now he did. Family, home, love. The flames had led him here, and he would walk through fire again, 1,000 times over, to keep them.